Hi, my name is Ravi Mistry. I'm a photographer and expert on Lightroom editing. So today we're gonna look at advanced features of Lightroom. So let me go ahead and take you with me on my screen. So as you can see, we are already here in develop module of Lightroom. And we can see a very standard raw file of a landscape photograph. So we're gonna look at all the advanced features here. So let's start with the tone curve. Tone curve is a very powerful tool. You can work with increasing your contrast and you can work your histogram properly. So as you can see in the back, you can see the exact histogram from the top. What it means, you can have your blacks, you can have your shadows, you can have your midtones, you can have your highlights, and you can have your whites. Now, if you have just started with the Lightroom, you might have something like this. So this is a very assisted adjustment for the curves. What we want is a complete freedom to work around. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and press this button right here. So now we are completely free to do whatever we want, okay? Now, as I reduce the shadows and increase the highlight, what does that mean? That's a basic contrast. So if I turn it off and on, you can see it straight away. The next thing we want to check is HSL. So HSL is very simple. It has to do with the colors. So hue is the color shift. You can shift any color's value from, let's say, red towards magenta or towards orange. Let's talk about blues. You can shift it towards aqua or green or towards purple or magenta. Okay, so we are changing the position of the color on a color wheel. Next thing is the saturation. Saturation is the intensity of specific color. So let's say we increase blue. So as you can see, it is increasing the intensity of the blue color quite dramatically. But if we increase orange, it will increase the orange, as you can see in the mountain. Next thing is the luminance, which is the brightness of specific color. So we have quite prominent blue happening here. So we can decrease the brightness of that color or increase the brightness of that color. Similarly, if you do green, as you can see on the right side, it will control greens. So HSL is quite powerful tool when you want to work with any specific colors. So you're gonna leave them as is. Next is the split tone. So if you want to add specific color to, let's say, range of highlights or the range of shadows. So let's say in the highlights, we want to add a little bit of orange, and in the shadows, we want to add a little bit of teal. So you can have this specific look applied to your photos straight away. With this toggle, you can turn it off and on your specific adjustments. I'm gonna go back to the normal. Next thing we want to look at is the details. That is where you can increase the sharpness of your photo. So by default, Lightroom will provide you certain, like, let's say 40 count, but if you reduce it, this is how the raw file actually captured. So you can increase it all the way until you see the pixels are deteriorating. So you can hold option. So it will show you black and white. So in black and white, you will be able to see if you are breaking any pixels or not, if you're deteriorating the quality of your photograph. Next thing is the radius. So what size of the cluster of the pixels you want to apply your sharpness to. Very similar to what you have in a high pass filter in Photoshop. So I would recommend if you have really high megapixel cameras, let's say 50 megapixels or plus, you want to go to, like, let's say 1.4. Otherwise, stick to 1.0, which is good. And sharpening, I think around 40 to 50 is fine. And this is a noise reduction. So noise reduction with the brightness, then you can retain the details of it, and you can add additional contrast to everything you have smoothed it out. So luminance in noise reduction is very helpful when you have lots of digital noise happening. While in the color, it will help you to reduce the color noise. When you see zoom in all the way, you will usually see red, blue, magenta, green, that kind of pixel noise that you can reduce with the color slider. And then you can retain smoothness and the details alongside. So that was the detail. Then you have lens correction. So if you have a specific lens, now I shot this with a fairly new 24-70 f4 from Nikon. So it doesn't have a built-in profile, but you can go ahead and select if it's available, and it will apply certain presets. So we're not going to do that because our lens preset is not available as of right now in the Lightroom. And we want to check the chromatic aberration. So it will remove all the chromatic aberration. So whenever you see that magenta, green fringes or blue fringes happening at the contrasty areas in some of the lens, that will take a place. So you can go ahead and check this, and that will take care of it. On the manual side, everything what we just did, you can have complete manual control as a distortion of the photo. Then you can control the fringes. If you have, fortunately, all the lenses today, all the manufacturers, they manufacture lenses so well that you don't have any color fringes happening. So this is something you will be using very rarely. And then you can add certain vignette or remove it. So that was the lens correction. Next, we want to take a look is transform. Transform is you want to correct any levels in your photograph. If you want to have very straight lines, things like those, so you can have your vertical adjustment. You can have your horizontal adjustment. Now, since this particular photo being a landscape photograph, we don't want to tweak it a lot, but mountains are quite falling back, so we want to correct them straight using vertical only. So we're gonna do something like this, not too much. Right? We can always increase and decrease the scale of it. So we're gonna keep it right here. And aspect is when you want to squeeze the photo and correct it accordingly. And if you want to shift the photo completely on the X and Y axis. So that was your transform. You can always use auto settings as well. Then you have effects panel. So this is where you can have post crop vignetting. So once you have cropped the file, let's say this much, and then you can apply that vignetting specifically on that crop. And there are other adjustments when it comes to post crop vignetting. And then you have grain. So if you like the specific look of the grains, then you can add the grain to mimic the film look. And you can change the characteristic with the roughness and the size of the grains itself. Right? So those are the effect panel. And the last one panel we have is the calibration panel. So calibration panel, you can see your primary colors, red, green, and blue. And all three primary colors, you will have adjustments of hue and saturation. And on the top, you can have tint control for the shadow areas. As you can see, if I'm applying it, it applies everything very subtly. But compared to HSL and calibration part, the only thing you want to be careful is if you make changes in a certain primary color, it will be applied to the other colors as well. So let's say if I'm increasing the saturation of red, so it's definitely going to increase the saturation of red, but it will also increase the saturation of blue and green as well. Let me demonstrate that. So increase it, you can see the green is being intense and blue also is taking certain effects. Similarly, if I do the green ones, it will apply to the blue and red as well. So the idea here is all these three primary channels are tangled with each other. So you want to experiment and try which works best for you. Usually the best idea to work with is the blue saturation panel. So as you can see, as I increase blue saturation, it also takes place into red and green as well. We're gonna keep this a little bit. Now, let's start editing this photo quickly as per our taste. So we want to introduce our local adjustments. So these 3 panels here you see are local adjustments. First one is the gradient filter. So gradient filter is something you want to use it where you want a specific gradient from the brightness to dark or dark to bright or whatever the adjustment you want to apply. So here we have a very bright spot on the sky. You want to click and drag, and then you can apply any settings according to your desire. You can change your exposure, you can change your temperature. Okay. I'm gonna try again. So if I do it again, it will be a completely separate gradient filter. So here I don't want any exposures. Here I want it to look slightly bluer. So I can do that. So that's gradient filter. Then you have radial. So radial is very simple. What's easier here, you want to go ahead and click this invert. So make sure it is checked to the invert and the feather is full. That is something I personally like to do. You can do it according to your taste. So this patch right here is pretty dark and I want some light to it. So I can apply a radial filter just by dragging, as you can see. And then I can add some brightness to it. Similarly, if I want a light streak to be happening as well, I can make a huge radial filter right here. If you want to delete, you can just select and hit delete and it will be deleted. And on the sides, you can change the angle of it as well. So we're gonna keep it like this. We're gonna add some warmth because the sunlight is coming from the left. And then we can add some dehaze to it. So which will provide us lots of definition. So what we did in this particular filter is temperature, tint, exposure, and dehaze. I can add more exposure. Then we're gonna go ahead and click new. We want all the shadow details happening here as well because those are kind of our subjects. These 2 guys kayaking. So here I'm gonna increase a little bit of exposure, add shadows so we can have some details on those 2 guys. Increase some black, add some warmth. Okay. Then in general, I'll just increase some dehaze and add a little bit of vibrance since it is being a landscape photograph. Okay, so far what we did, you can use a slash key on top of your return button on your keyboard, and you can see before and after. So far all the adjustment we did, we came all the way to here. The next adjustment we want to take a look is the brush. That is the very last one. So I'm just gonna click that, and by default it is on the exposure. You can increase and decrease the size of your brush with your scroll button on the mouse. Now what I'm gonna do is basic technique of dodging and burning. So I'm gonna reduce the size. I'm gonna make sure my brush adjustments are very light. So the flow is full here, so it's gonna be very heavy. So I'm gonna reduce that to 50%. And I'm gonna start brushing it. See, it is still very harsh. So I'm gonna undo that. And I'm gonna reduce my flow even more and reduce my exposure. We want very subtle effect here. Okay, if you don't know where you have brushed, you can always click this on the toolbar, show selected mask overlay, and wherever you have brushed, it will become red, as you can see right here. If I turn it off, that red will go away. I'm just gonna pick some of the bright spots. And I can have very dedicated definitions to certain areas. All right. So this way we can have everything applied locally. We don't have to stick to global adjustment. So now if I just open one of the brush and turn it off, it will show me what I have done so far. As you can see on the peak of the mountains, the brightness is turning on and off. Similarly, with the radial, if I toggle the switch, it will tell me what all we have done with just a radial filter. And with the gradient, we can see on the sky and the bottom, the reflection, whatever adjustment we have done, it will show us turning on and off. Okay. So those are very powerful tools when it comes to advanced Lightroom, right? So let me do before and after one more time, and you can see it's a dramatic change in the whole photograph itself. Okay, so hope you have learned something new with the Lightroom, and hope you enjoy the session. Do subscribe to our channel if you want to learn more. All right, thank you.